Okay, so welcome everyone. This is one of our podcasts for both comedy and the arts on prescription, and this is particularly centred around men's health. So what we're going to talk about for the next hour or so is men's health specifically and men's mental health. I'm delighted to have Tom Findlay from Groove Armada and Tom Walker, sometimes known as Jonathan Pye, to discuss men's mental health with me. I'm going to go to Tom again. And so Tom, you're just about to celebrate Groove Armada's 30th anniversary next year, and you just come back from America as well, haven't you?
So. Yeah, so I've been in, so 30th anniversary next year, and just got back from playing Coachella in LA, which is a lot of fun, a bit tiring. I only got in yesterday morning, so if I mince my words a bit, that's the reason why.
And I presume there's no mud in Coachella, is that right?
Absolutely none.
Right,
No.
oh, how lovely.
Absolutely pristine.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, having been a veteran of Glastonbury many years ago, where I actually saw you as a punter, I can't believe there's a festival without any mud. And also, I'm delighted to have Tom Walker, sometimes known as Jonathan Pye, and I've done a few gigs now with Tom, and we always go somewhere surprising with Tom. But you're actually preparing for a tour coming up, aren't you, Tom? So how are you feeling about
that? It's horrible. I hate writing. I hate it. Some people love it and get up at 8 a.m. and write for 8 hours. For me, it's like pulling teeth and getting blood out of a stone. And this is the worst bit. 6 months of writing. And also, the sort of stuff I write, it's pointless me writing a 15-minute set piece about Keir Starmer, because by September, who knows? So it's difficult. So you're trying to write something that has some longevity, which in Westminster terms is almost impossible.
It can be difficult, can't it? But on the other hand, it gives you a lot of material, I would have thought.
Everyone says that. Everyone says, it's plenty of material. I find it overwhelming. I mean, when I watch the news and something awful is happening, most people react by going, "Oh God, that's awful," and I watch it and I go, "Oh God, that's awful. Oh Christ, I've got to write some jokes about it." So it's like added pressure. So actually, I wish the world would stay still sometimes so that I could catch up.
Have a bit of a rest.
Yeah.
And back to you, Tom Findlay. You're also you have a second job as a counsellor at King's College. So what sort of counselling do you do? And is that men or women or both, or how does that work?
Yes, I work just down the road from here at King's College on the Strand. My background is in cognitive behavioural therapy, so CBT. Right. That's what I was trained as. But it's a more kind of broad-based counselling. It's short-term work, so for 5-6 sessions, and working with not so much trauma, but things like anxiety, depression, lots of social anxiety for students who have kind of come through that kind of COVID period and really struggling with connection. So we see tons of that. It's really rewarding work. I've been there sort of 7 years. I started in the NHS during the pandemic, and then I moved to King's, and really enjoy it 2.5 days a week. It's a bit of a challenge flipping in and out when I come off a gig like this and then have to go to work tomorrow. Oh, right. That's quite challenging, but I'll give it my best shot.
That's good. And the sort of stuff you're seeing at the moment then there's a lot of sort of social anxiety. What does that mean? Is that a fear of going out, do you think?
It's a fear of being negatively evaluated by others, if you're giving the definition. But so it's for students that might be the ultimate thing is like fear of public speaking, what I'm doing now. Right. I probably have a bit of that, but that would be the most severe level. But some people, it's just, even just initiating a conversation with a friend can be hugely challenging. So, and you see tons of it, and I think it is very much like, it is about talking to them about how were they impacted by the pandemic, because it's so significant for that age group. And, people lost social skills and they're trying to find those back, and then university is utterly overwhelming for different reasons. So I would say that's my main one. It's an incredibly hard one to work with, because really it's about people moving towards something they feel very fearful about, and you just have to sort of tenderly move them towards that sort of, we call it like graded exposure, like step by step towards something you find very triggering. But it's really rewarding work, and I love doing it.
And do you think sort of smartphones, screens, social media is a role to play here? I mean, a lot of people like to blame that completely. I'm not sure that that's totally the case, but I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, and I think when I'm sort of working with people who are struggling with anxiety, trying to get them to disconnect from their phones and be more present and connect to the real world, it's something I'm always encouraging people to do. Yeah, and I think you just see the people just endlessly doom scrolling through Instagram. It's a depressing thing to see, and it's obviously not great for your mental state. It's kind of, in a sense, it's kind of we are the product of what we put our attention to in the world. So if you're staring at your phone for an hour at the end, it's not going to make you feel great.
It's also quite obviously, because I see myself do it, an addiction, right? You see yourself pick up the phone and you don't even know you're doing it. I sometimes have, I've got Twitter already open on a tab on my computer and I reopen it because it's a habit, right? And I think the content aside, any form of addiction is really detrimental because you're a slave to it, right? I've recently given up smoking and it's like freedom, and I wish that I could kind of give up that as well. So content aside, and that kind of that social pressure of Instagram and trying to be the best version of you, just any form of that is just an addiction within itself. It's rewiring your brain.
And I think that point you made about being the best version of you is the most important thing for them. It's really hard when you're seeing these kind of perfect specimens constantly put in front of you. And I think something they really struggle with things like body dysmorphia and anorexia and all sorts of eating disorders are very much linked to that, or to some extent linked to that.
There is nothing sadder as well than watching someone try to take the perfect selfie, because it's like that, and so the projection on the photo is one of perfection and beauty, and yet when you're watching them do it, there's something so sad and painful about it because it is fakery. Anyway, there we are.
Yeah, and you both public figures, you must get slagged off online.
I find it. I had to take a step back from social media a couple of years ago, even though I'm a social media being, right? I wouldn't exist without it. It's given me a career, and I have to acknowledge that. But, I do put myself out there. And like when politicians get slagged off, it's like, sometimes it is over the top and can be quite dangerous, but it's like, you did ask for this job. Like Keir Starmer getting slagged, I did a piece about him yesterday. He did ask for that. Right, he did ask for the job, and I suppose to a certain extent, when I'm putting material out there, I am. There is a contract that I'm doing. You can express your opinion about it, right? But what is interesting, like if I'm playing a gig of 1,000 people, the only person I can see all night is the one guy in the third row with his arms folded, not laughing, right? And online is exactly the same. So it's the negative comment. I can have 1,000 thumbs up, it's the one thumbs down that hits me. I suppose that's human nature, but social media it is a cesspit. I mean, I get called horrible things on a daily basis, and I have to compartmentalize it, but sometimes it's very difficult because it feels really personal, even though they're attacking Jonathan Pye and not Tom Walker, although sometimes they are.
Right. That's really, quite handy, having a sort of...
there is an element of a barrier there,
yeah.
It's certainly affected me, I would say.
Yeah, and Tom, as an art, I think all artists have anxiety about how their work's going to go down and that sort of thing. So when you release something, is it a period of like, oh God, I hope people like it, or how does it come over?
I tend to, everything you said, you always remember the one awful review or the one bad comment, and you ignore the 600 things that said great things about you. So I do try desperately not to look at anything now. And the same thing when you're playing a gig. There's that one person looking miserable at the front, and you focus in on them, and then 7,000
people lost it.
So and that happens. So I do think that's incumbent on you to be aware of that.
What sort of, you're with people who have got social anxiety and stuff. What sort of advice do you give them around that type of thing, around screens and social media, and also other things that you've found that have worked for people?
I think with like social anxiety, a lot of it, and then the same thing. I think it's about where do you our attention is a flexible thing, so it's about how do you use that and where do you put it, And so if you allow your attention to be drawn to negative things about you, or with social anxiety, a lot of it is you feel a lot of kind of physical tension within yourself, and you tend to focus on that and then feel like that's the way you're coming across.
Right.
So a lot of it is about trying to take your attention out into the room, be a good listener, focus on things that are happening around you rather than your own internal experiences. So I think a lot of it is about that, and we can do that. We can shift attention. We can actively do that. Yeah, like you could say, go and listen to something over here or there, and teach people the skills to do that.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is about that. Yeah, and making people think that they have ways to manage their own experiences. It doesn't have to be like this.
And how do you, I'm sure, probably all of us get stressed at some point in our life, and I'm sure you have as well. How do you deal with your own stress?
I have sort of routines and stuff before the show, kind of slightly silly routines.
Oh, yeah. What do you do?
I always brush my teeth before I go on stage, which is just an odd thing. I nicked off Andy, but that helps. And just the little things that help you just get into a groove before you hit the stage, because you never quite know what you're going to come into. Like the Coachella gig was like, there was about 2,000 people 20 minutes before the thing, and I was thinking this is going to be terrible. And then when you walked on, there were 25,000 people, and you have to sort of think, okay, right, and you sort of recorrect. But having those routines and things you do are really helpful. I've got quite into this thing called breath work recently, which is essentially just sort of managing your breathing. I'll give props to a guy called Breathe with Sandy that I looked at on YouTube. He's totally free, but that's really good for just, sending it. So we call that like somatic quieting, but a way of calming down your body and trying to say to your body, this is fine, you can manage the situation. So I do a bit of that. So something like, inhaling for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds is really good and centering.
Right.
I'll probably have a drink as well, which is probably not great, but just a couple, just to calm myself down. But that would be, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that in my counselling sessions, but it's probably a routine that I get into as well.
No, I think alcohol. It's interesting, alcohol, because it's obviously a drug and it can cause enormous harm. And we've got some people here I know who work with alcohol as well. But in small degrees, it can be helpful. What about you, Tom? How do you? Do you get stressed before you go on?
Yeah.
Right. So what's your routine? Well, how do you
I always. It's dangerous if I'm not.
Right.
Shitting my pants, basically.
Right.
And weirdly, sometimes the bigger the gig, the easier it is because the crowd is, yes. Whereas it's when you're warming up a show and you don't really know the show backwards. And when I warm up, you're warming up in front of 50 people, then 60, then 80, then 100. By the time it gets to 1,000 people, you go, by that point, you should know the show. So, it's stressful walking out on stage, and also I'm on my own. That's what's really. I started out as an actor, a very unsuccessful one. But normally when you're on stage, you're there with people, so you've got support. And if you're losing your lines, you can be a rabbit in headlights. Help me out. When I go on stage, it's just me. I can be in a room of 2,500 people, and it's the loneliest I've ever felt in my life. When you're particularly on a difficult night. And because of the sort of thing I do, it's kind of technically quite difficult because it's fast and it's machine gun fire, a lot of it. The fear of a heckle. I've been in therapy about heckles. I've spent many hours talking about how can I deal with a heckle, because I just want to kill them because they're ruining my night and everybody else's night.
So no heckling ever.
But on a different level, this here is easier for me than the 10 minutes before this when we all had a cup of tea and we all had to say hello to each other. That to me is terrifying. And everyone thinks, oh, Jonathan Pye, he must be. I am very socially awkward, I think sometimes. But I also think that that's the story that I tell myself, which exacerbates it. That I go, oh Christ, I'm not going to know anyone in here. I'm not going to remember anyone's name. Oh God, I've got nothing to say for myself. Yeah. And then that's something that I've been trying to work on as I get older, because it's no fun.
I was going to add to that that I don't think also stress is not necessarily a bad thing. And so I think it's about being curious about that experience, because we talk about de-stress and eustress, and eustress can be a positive thing. You need a bit of that to help you focus. I think sometimes there's a tendency to say, well, what I'm experiencing now is anxiety, but often it's not. It's excitement or anticipation. They're on the same sort of spectrum. So sometimes it's about am I nervous, or actually is this just one of the biggest gigs in my life, and I'm feeling a sense of excitement, and I want to get this right, and this is helping me to focus.
Sometimes when you're in love, it feels like anxiety, doesn't
sure,
it?
exactly.
It's so exciting.
So it's good to have to be more, exactly, to try to have a richer sort of range of words for how we're understanding our emotional experience.
Yeah, I don't see that the day running up to a big gig, where obviously you're sort of hyper-focused, you're hyper on edge. I don't think of that as anxiety. That's part of the job. And for the 3 months when I'm on tour, I have to mitigate it and I have to be aware of it and be conscious of it. But that's part of being on tour, that you're going to spend a lot of this 3 months anxious, but it's not... And have trouble sleeping and have to deal with that. But that's not it is anxiety, but it's part of the job rather than outside of those stressful times. If I'm feeling anxious daily, then that's more of an issue.
Without it, yeah. And we're talking about two quite famous people doing big shows, but actually that's exactly what people have every day. Some people feel anxious about getting into school, for example, or going into work, or, I have my own anxieties around speaking in public, but everyone in their lives has things that make them anxious. So it's quite interesting what you were saying about anxiety, and I think one of the things that's happened medically, as a doctor I've seen, is that sometimes those anxieties are labelled as a clinical entity, when in fact it's part of normal life. We all get anxious. I just wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's a thing I do with a lot of students. They call this, it's called a thing called experiential avoidance, which is this idea that we don't want to experience difficult feelings. So what we do is you then move away from those.
Right.
And try to say to them that anything that has any meaning for you, and you mentioned like falling in love or passing an exam, or your driving test, or doing a gig to...
There's a sort of risk involved in all those things.
It will come with a set of difficult emotions, and that means that it's meaningful to you, that it's important, but that doesn't mean you don't move towards it. In fact, it's the opposite, And so I think sometimes encouraging people to move towards those experiences can be really healthy, and to see that this means this thing must be meaningful to you. Right. That's why you're feeling this way.
We've also spent the last decade, and by the way, I am on the left and I am liberal, right? But we have come out of a decade of sort of ball-aching sensitivity over hearing opinions that you might not agree with, and being offended by that. And I think that's really not helped, that people have been silenced, but people that I fundamentally disagree with have been sort of silenced because you go, well, I'm offended by that opinion, and we have nurtured that, right? And I think we're kind of coming out the other end of that, which I think has been not helpful. You have an opinion that I disagree with, I'm offended by that. That's not been helpful, and therefore I think there's a generation that's coming up behind me that has been shielded from uncomfortable conversations, conversations that have to be had, and debates have to be had. And if someone does have a different opinion to you, well, that's probably a valid opinion, and therefore it deserves discussion rather than argument.
I was going to ask you about that. So I don't know if many people have seen the Louis Theroux thing about the manosphere, which that I watched, and I thought it was quite interesting. As always, Louis Theroux is he's quite interesting in his views, and what I realised with that is partly that's just naked capitalism. That's about men trying to make money out of stuff, and if they're making money out of a sort of mild or quite severe misogyny, that's okay because they're making money. I just wondered how we can, because one of the problems with that is that the role models for men tend to be people like Andrew Tate and stuff, and really they should be Tom Findlay and Tom Walker. But how can we make that well? So how can we make that shift? How can we get men who are disgruntled with life, who have maybe problems with getting to know women and that sort of thing, how can we bring them out of their room, so to speak, and get them onto a more normal plane? I haven't got an answer for that, so I'm just chucking it out.
I watched the programme on the way back from from America. I found it obviously like profoundly depressing. And you're right, it was sort of felt like an exercise in making money.
Yeah.
And very sort of reductive, how can we make life simple for people? And then the whole misogyny aspect is just profoundly depressing. But it was the idea of like kind of giving people a simple solution for a world that's actually really complicated. And I think it's much better to acknowledge that sort of life is difficult and it's challenging. And once you do that, life feels a lot less challenging somehow. You just think, okay, well, I'm going to have to deal with stuff along the way, and that's normal. And I think, young adulthood, young male adulthood, you'll go through difficult times. But I think this idea that you give these people these sort of simple solutions and they join universities and pay, £300 and get the girls and all this sort of stuff, it's clearly nonsense, and it's oversimplifying life, which is just supposed to be complicated and difficult. But if we acknowledge that, then that allows for much more interesting, nuanced conversations about what's happening in the world,
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And part of the thing about this podcast is to try and open men up. And actually, after our last one that we had, a young woman came up to me and said, my male mates are quite good at talking about our feelings now, and actually it is improving slightly. So maybe we just see the bad bit. I don't know. I mean, Tom, what's your view on the manosphere or whatever? I hate that word as well, but anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I have made a point of following everyone on Twitter that I hate, because I want to know what people are saying. So I follow Andrew Tate and Tommy Robinson and all these ghastly people. It is really depressing. It's really strange how it's like industrial misogyny. It's really strange. I think things are going to get a lot worse before they get better in that front. Donald Trump was at the same thing as Andrew Tate recently. Tommy Robinson, who shouldn't be allowed in America because of all of his convictions, was welcomed with open arms to, I think, Mar-a-Lago recently. So you can't think of these people as fringe anymore. There was a really interesting thing that I've just a couple of weeks after Labour came to power. There were race riots on the back of that awful thing that happened. But there was a lot of arrests because there was a lot of racist violence. What was really interesting is the amount of people who were arrested who have convictions for domestic violence, and there is this really strange connection between the far right, and I mean the far right, rather than the hard right, which is kind of where we're swinging, but further right to that, and violence and domestic violence and violence against women. And there's a really interesting correlation there that I think we need to be aware of. This whole manosphere and the far right and the hard right and where all this money's coming from, and it's all part of the same kind of weird, where all this money's coming from. Where is Tommy Robinson getting his money from? Where is Andrew Tate getting their money from? It's all pretty dark and shady.
Yeah, and one of the things in that Louis Theroux thing was about their upbringing. I thought it's about their childhood, and quite often they didn't have a solid male role model. I thought. I mean, you can't generalise totally, but there was a lot of. I remember one guy was going, "God, I hope my mum doesn't see this," and so they're aware of their responsibilities, but they sort of somehow don't react in a way that perhaps we would in that way. So.
I didn't think that a single one of them cared anything about the people that they were selling their products to, though. That was the thing that was deeply depressing.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they had any interest in improving the lives of young men at all. I think the only interest they had was making as much money as they could, and that was why I found it so depressing.
Yeah, no, I thought it was quite depressing as well. And the trouble was, and I was hoping that we might find some answers here, how we could sort of, gang up against the manosphere and actually present a really good way. And I think, actually music and comedy are a great way of doing that, because comedians and musicians are role models, I think, and footballers. So we have had Robbie Savage on this podcast too. He's a great role model, actually, because he's willing to talk about his own sort of mental health. So do you think, do you think it would help people if we were more open about our own mental health difficulties? I just wondered what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, it's what brought me to therapy in the first place. So I was kind of, so I think it's good to be able to talk about. So I think it's about 2010, hence the album was called Black Light that we talked about earlier. And that was a kind of a year when I was essentially depressed. I didn't even really know it at the time. And I don't think with depression, I don't think it's ever one thing. It's always a cluster of little things. And so we'd been dropped by a label, and I was living away from home. My kids were very young. There were just tons and tons of things. And then I sort of realized that I was just kind of deactivating and disconnecting from things. And actually it was quite difficult. And I think things are so much better now. But my experience then in like 2010 of reaching out to people and trying to talk about my own experiences with a lot of men found that very difficult to be around. Right. And that, almost like they thought they might catch depression if they stayed close to you.
So you're
while,
contagious.
Yeah, I'm a bit contagious. Yeah, so it wasn't great. And
But women can do that. I think women are better at doing that. Would you say?
Absolutely, yeah. And my wife was amazing supporting me then, and generally I think that's something that women are just generally much better at doing, about creating communities for each other around whatever it is. And I think that's something that men are still kind of struggling with, or I do think it's improving. The things you mentioned, like kind of football clubs, music can be real magnets for those experiences. And it has improved, and I've definitely noticed that in the men that I'm now seeing in counselling, that the conversations are much more open, and they're having those conversations with their own friends. And even though social media gets a bad rap in lots of ways, there are sort of supportive sites that people can find if they feel like they're struggling, they can feel less isolated. So I think things have changed for the better, but if anything, we have a tendency to focus, I think, inevitably on the younger population, because it's sort of sexier in the manosphere, and there's a story there. But there's a big story, I think, about men around my age, between sort of 45 and 55, who are kind of deactivated, losing work, maybe with AI coming down the track, lots of pubs closing, all these things. That's, in a way, I think, that's great you're doing this social prescribing stuff, because that's so important, I think, and that's something that even now I think I struggle with my friends a bit. Like, we get together occasionally, but it's something we have to make a real effort to do. Yeah. So I think that's actually that age range, at 45 to 55, and I think if you look at, 14 men a day taking their own lives, I would say
it's the highest risk, isn't it?
And I'd say in that group is where it's really going up, and it's a concern.
Yeah, no, 45 to 55 is, I'm almost bang in the middle of that, and it's.
We don't want to know your age.
It's fucking depressing. No, it really is, and it is difficult, and it is. It does really feel like, and I've got obviously a lot of my peers are a similar age, and it really does feel like a time where you're looking back and really looking at mistakes, but also looking forward, and it kind of feels like. Genuinely, that's sort of the last chance you've got to make some really serious fundamental changes for the rest of your life. It's a really interesting.
It's a difficult stage, isn't it? And it was interesting what you were saying about there's a bit of you're away from your family, or maybe your kids are teenagers and rebelling a bit, or the work's not going so well. So it's often multifactorial. And what sort of helped you? Tom, that's what I was interested in.
I mean, it took me a long time. It took like 9 months of being, basically being a very depressed person and being very deactivated and struggling to get out of bed and all the obvious things and issues with sleep. And eventually, I mean, it was, lots of, I think CBT has a bit of a bad rap these days. It's I think people find it a bit simplistic, and I understand that. But for me, that really helped, because it's that sense of it being a feeling, not a fact. These ideas you have about yourselves that you start to buy in are often not true, but they're kind of based on various cognitive biases you have about yourself. So being aware of that, and then I think sort of avoiding rumination, which is the worst thing you get with depression. So trying to think your way out of a problem. So I always say to people, it's better to act your way into feeling than to feel your way into acting.
Right, I'm going to have to unpack that one.
Do things, move towards stuff, and then you'll feel like things change. But if you sit on your own, just trying to figure problems out, it tends to just get you deeper and deeper into the crap.
And you were saying about your wife and friends and stuff. Did it help for you to talk about it? I know your friends were a bit like, hang on, I don't want any of this.
Not all of them, but some of them.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, my wife was hugely supportive, and she was great, but it was a lot. We were talking about this earlier. It was a lot to put on her. Yeah. And then eventually I got professional help, through the NHS, which wasn't great. Right. They weren't the best practitioners, but just the skills they taught me were really helpful. And that's when I then started studying and then doing the MSc in psychology and then eventually training to be a therapist. So it was kind of my training that really helped me. And now it's like, there's like days a bit like today actually when, well actually I feel fine, but you know, lots of things are coming at me and I've just come back from the tour where maybe that might have been an issue for me, but now once you you just have to double down on the things that you know work for you. So sort of, you know, making sure you get right sleep, exercise, and whatever it is that thing that works for you, be aware of what that is. And then somehow the depression doesn't have such a hold on you because you know you've got the tools to fix it when it comes.
Yeah, that's good, Tom.
It's a lot about control as well, and not control in a kind of like, oh God, but like things like exercise. And a few things happened to me when just before Pi kind of started. But I realized I didn't have any control of my life. I had no money, no control over my money. I had no control over my career. I had no control over anything. And I realized that the only things I could control was what I drank, what I smoked, how much I exercised. And I stopped drinking for a month, stopped smoking for a couple of years, and started to exercise. And within a few weeks, stuff
so something about control.
Just taking a bit of control. But I'll tell you this story because this is about, you know, arts on prescription and how powerful that can be. The Hammersmith Apollo has for various reasons, holds a lot of significance in my life. But I'd been out of work for many, many years. I had zero self-worth. I had zero value. Everyone in my life was fed up with me wanting to be an actor. It's like, maybe it is time to get a proper job. And I kind of, I was fucking depressed. It was awful. Life was really, really tough. And I managed to go and see Kate Bush at the Hammersmith Apollo. And the last song she sings is, and every time it rains, and there's a lyric, ooh, I just know that something good is gonna happen, I don't know when. And when she sang that, it was like the heavens opened and this beam of light struck me. And it was the nearest I've ever had to a religious experience, but it wasn't God or Jesus, it was Kate Bush singing at me. And I'm getting kind of emotional just remembering it. It was a fundamental moment in my life. Something good is gonna happen, I don't know when. And it was, someone was talking to me. Within 2.5 years, I was stood on that stage performing. And I swear to God, Kate Bush saved my ass, right? She did, because, she bought me another couple of years. That concert bought me another couple of years of like, come on, you can do it. And then about a year later after that was when I decided I need to stop smoking, need to stop blah, blah, blah. And within a month of doing that, Pi was born. Within 18 months of that, I was playing the Hammersmith Apollo. And that's the power. And it might be wanky and it might be like airy-fairy, but that's my experience. That's an artistic experience that changed my life. And I've had a tough year this year for various reasons. I went to see Talking Heads recently at the Hammersmith Apollo, and it was another moment like that, just fucking one foot in front of the other, keep fucking going, having a communal experience of you know, even going to the cinema on your own in the middle of a day is a better experience than watching it on Netflix, right? And these are important moments, and I don't know. There you go. It seemed relevant to this podcast.
No, it's fantastic.
No, I completely agree with you. I think, you know, when you feel depressed, you pull away from human connection, you pull away from things of value in your life. So it's kind of trying to reverse those cycles and being very deliberate and intentional about that. So yeah, if it's
and
Kate
being
Bush
aware that you're
it,
pissed off and depressed
Yeah.
is the first thing.
Yeah.
And just following up on something you said, I think men are getting better at sort of chatting to each other, but I do think you've kind of got 2 sessions down the pub when you're a bit in tears before your friends get a little bit, oh Christ, can you just snap out of it? Yeah. I do think women are better at it because they kind of drip feed their emotions to each other. How are you? They'll answer the question genuinely, and then they'll move on to how their week was and what's going on in their life. When with guys, it's how are you? Yeah, cool. Yeah, great. It takes a couple of pints before we sort of open up.
But you also have to find your people. So there are men that I can have those conversations with, and don't go to them and think that, and I can have great meaningful conversations with a couple of friends of mine, and we can walk and talk and have the best time. And there are certain people that don't offer that for me, and you can't expect that from them if they're not able to give that to you. So
no, it's funny, is it walk and talk? There's some theory, also driving somewhere, it's because you're not looking at each other, you're looking straight ahead.
It's such an incredibly powerful, a friend of mine has done a radio show recently, and it's all about confessions, and there's a scene in it where the mum and the daughter are confessing something to each other, and it's kind of implied within it that the only reason they can do it is because they're in the car and they're not looking at each other. And it really is, it's a fascinating phenomenon, that. Yes.
I know, I don't know why it is, and I think, I think sort of straight counselling I think the other thing about mental health is different things help different people. So you found your things, and I suppose from a GP's point of view, you have to find the thing that helps. Now, sometimes that is tablets, all right? However, like 9 million people in England alone are on antidepressants. Those people, not all of those people need them. Some of them do, but I think that's, and what I'm interested in is how we can help men find those little stress relieving, bits of their lives. And I think that's one thing about music, and comedy and sport actually, but music, sometimes you do have that sort of moment, that sort of shivery moment, which is clearly a sort of autonomic nervous system. Something has changed, and we've just heard about Tom's religious experience with Kate Bush, which should be the headline, I think, shouldn't it? So, but I think music's got something there, and I think also football's a sort of slightly different, because usually half the supporters are a bit pissed off because they've lost, and so it's a bad thing, whereas everyone wins in music in a way, don't they?
Music still can be quite tribal, as well as comedy. People have got their bands, they've got their, but football, yes, it does bring people together, but it's by its very nature tribal, which can sometimes be. And also the thing with football, when it comes to guys not actually talking to each other, the amount of conversations I've heard in a pub, and it's two mates talking about the FA Cup final of 1984 and who scored, and it's just like stats, and you're like, you're not saying anything. Do you know what I mean? But I'm like that with like movies. Me and my mates can talk about movies for hours on end, and you go, we haven't really discussed anything, have we? But I don't know. It's got very kind of generalised experiences, but of working with men and women as I do in counselling, and just I think that my experience of working with men is they tend to be a little bit more solution focused. Like they want to know tools, they want things that help them.
Right.
I think, and this again is just my experience of just the counselling with a lot of the women that I work with, the students I work with. Often we're just talking stuff through, and that's really, and I'm just doing a lot of listening, which is great, and just saying that must be really hard for you, and nodding, and I like that too. It's a very different experience. With men, I think that again, it's very sort of generalised, but it is about saying, here's some things that would help you, and I think that's why like your concept of social prescribing comes in, is really strong for them. And maybe after like session 3, once you've established some of that stuff, then some of the interesting stuff starts to come out.
Yeah.
But in those first couple of sessions, it's sort of drawing them in about tools. They want tools that can help them manage these problems in their lives.
I have done and hope to in the future have done some therapy, and I found exactly that. I found it really frustrating. It's like we're on session 5 now. Help me. What's wrong with me? What do I do? How do I behave differently? And I found it really frustrating that my particular therapist was very much like, you're just too hard on yourself. You expect too much of yourself. It's like, no, just fucking help me. Slap me around the face. Tell me how to be different. Tell me how to be happier. I don't know,
But a lot of men find it difficult to say, I'm unhappy. But are there signs, do you think, that we need to watch out for in our friends to show that they, maybe are suffering, because we're not very good at saying that?
But the point you made then is what he was trying to move you towards was more self-compassion. And that's something that men aren't great at doing either. So encouraging that, like, how would you, like the way we speak to ourselves is like, I always say to them, imagine that your best friend was speaking to you, and what would he say to you? And they would never say the things to you that you say to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think sort of encouraging men to move towards self-compassion is a really important thing. And I've got much better at that, because sometimes you might make a mistake or something goes wrong, and you can make it 10 times worse by self-attacking. Or you can say, okay, I accept that we all make mistakes in our lives and we move forwards, and what's the best way of doing that? So self-compassion is a really sort of difficult concept, and people think it's a bit kind of woo-woo, but actually it's just about demonstrating the same kindness to yourself as you would to somebody that you love in your life. That's not a hard thing to do.
No, that's quite good. And do you think there are little telltale signs in men that we need to be careful to look out for? I'm thinking of all men here. Can I just say, we've got sort of 5 more minutes, so start thinking about questions, because if you've got questions, please write them down, because I'd like to involve the audience in a bit. But just I wondered about that.
I mean, for me, the obvious thing was just, you withdraw into yourself. And so that's the thing. So I think when if you're seeing somebody who is, not engaging with the world in the same way, not picking up the phone, then I think it's always, we say that all the time, particularly around suicidality or risk, is never think that you're going to make the problem worse by talking about it. So move towards that. So that would be the thing,
Yeah, so going quiet, not saying as much, being sort of, being less active.
And then,
And Tom, is there anything?
Yeah, you kind of know when people are putting it on. You can tell with mates that you're kind of here, but you're kind of not. And I'm like that all the time. The friends that know me well know when I'm having a shit time, because I've got a face like a slapped arse at the best of times, right? But yeah, it's kind of fairly obvious. The difficulty I find as well is my job is pretty lonely, really. No one else writes Jonathan Pye. No one else cares whether Jonathan Pye puts another video out or not. I'm completely in charge of my own career, which is lovely in many respects. But I can go 3 or 4 days without having said 2 words to anyone, and that can be dangerous, because I quite like my own company.
Yeah.
But then you suddenly go, I've not spoken to anyone for 4 or 5 days. I need to crack the whip of myself and get out there, or make a phone call, or
I couldn't agree more with that. That sort of like coming off this tour, and you're playing to 25,000 people, and then they're all slapping on the back and telling you how great it was, and then you're backstage with all the other artists, and that's super fun, and then you're with your little community of people you tour with, and then suddenly you're at home alone, and it's really hard. And I would say that for me, that was a really difficult thing to manage, sort of like the kind of peak of just these peak experiences, and then utter isolation. And I still struggle with that now.
Yeah,
but now I'm here.
When
That's
you're on
helping.
tour, you do it like, it could be the best gig, the best fucking gig of your life, and 40 minutes later, travel lodge.
Exactly.
It's just like, I don't think we're supposed to live like that, really.
No.
And I think another thing for men. So I think that the whole geography for men and women is changing, and men are meant to be these sort of providers, aren't they, and hunters or whatever. And therefore, if poverty starts affecting men, not only do they feel poor, but they also feel like their whole role, they failed in their role. And I think that's a massive thing. And yet, still women generally look after kids, not always, but so the gender roles are really fluid at the moment. And I think men are coming out worse than women on this, because I think women are much more up for change, and I think men are finding it difficult. I just wondered what you thought about that.
I mean, the statistics would definitely support that. I mean, the suicide levels are shocking. I think it's 75% of men, those numbers are men who are taking their own lives. So, I think it is, and I think that goes back to the thing I was saying about that kind of 45 to 55 sort of lack of purpose is such an important thing.
Feeling a bit of a failure.
Yeah, and I think that's something, again, going back to your sort of social prescription concept, things like that. I think it doesn't have to be, it just has to be having meaningful experiences, and doing that with a group of people makes it even more meaningful. So I think they're great ideas, they're wonderful ideas. I hope there's more of it and it's more available to people.
Yeah, and I think that the support around sort of poverty is really important, because I do think that drives a lot of mental ill health, certainly, and sort of opportunity, but also a willingness to talk about it and almost, you can get some more benefits if you need it, if you're short of money. And sometimes social prescribing is very gritty like that. It's about getting a house or the funding in that way. But poverty is a real driver of this.
Poverty is the worst. over the last 10 years, when I've had a modicum of success, I've probably had a few mental health episodes due to pressure, but I would take that any day over the mental health issues I had because I couldn't afford to fucking eat. Yeah. And I think I lived in what you'd call relative poverty. I was never homeless or anything like that, but probably for over a decade, I was way below the breadline. You don't have any control. You feel shame because if you go to the pub, your friend has to buy you a pint. That was a massive driver for me of really feeling shitty. That was the main problem in my life. Me not being artistically validated because I couldn't find an acting job. Yeah, that was sort of there, but not being able to, not knowing where my next meal was coming from, not knowing if I could pay next month's rent for years on end. Comedy on prescription and stuff like that is massively important, but I think any government's main drive should be to sort out poverty above and beyond anything else, really. And also, going to therapy is fucking expensive. It's just, you have got to be middle class or above to even think about it. So it's a luxury therapy, let's be honest, and unless you're lucky enough to be in an institution where you would be able to get it for free or certain counselling on the NHS, but it's a rich man's luxury therapy.
I think the other thing that I notice about therapy as well is that you sort of say CBT, and I've taught CBT as well, but it's bloody difficult to do CBT on yourself. I mean, it's not an easy ride at all, and because you say, just have a course of CBT, you've got to really work at it, and a lot of people can't do it, actually. So it's not like, just do this and you're better, is it? So.
No, but I think that's also down to the skill of the practitioner. You don't, you have to kind of read the room and adapt the work you do to that person. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like one of the great achievements is IAP, so there's improving access to psychological therapy. So having you can get therapy through the NHS, and I know it has mixed results, but I mean, I did only just a couple of years in the NHS, and it was pretty rewarding stuff, and it's a great thing. We should celebrate the few successes we made in mental health. I think the IAPs have been an extraordinary thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think right. We just need more money in it, I think, don't we? Yeah. So that's another story. Just the last question is, Tom, the ball. Sorry, I had to mention this. Does that help you?
No, it was in a bag, and someone said, "Do you want to take the stress ball with you?" I've never had one before. Does it help? All right. It's quite nice. It's keeping me fairly chill. No, I don't normally go around with a stress ball. No,
right. Do you think Keir Starmer might need one today? Or
I think so.
Right.
Bless him.
Sure, we're about to deliver a stress ball. Look, I'd like to now go to the audience, really. So should we just have a couple of minutes while we collect? So Samantha, would you like to ask something? So Samantha Niblett.
Hello. It may have caught your attention that a week ago, thank you very much,
I
launched a campaign to get people talking about sex, to take away the shame and embarrassment associated with it. Cindy Gallop, who has got Make Love Not Porn, and who I've partnered with on it, talks about everyone seeks love, intimacy and human connection. But one of the things I spoke to Captain Moran about earlier this week is the fact that men just don't talk about sex. And so with that in mind, what do you think we can do to help break down the barriers to make men feel comfortable talking about sex so that they can talk about feeling desire, which we all crave, that connection that we all crave? What can we do to affect positive change? Women will talk to their mates about it, but men generally don't.
It's weird. I'd say that. I don't want to, but I would say about half the people that I see, the students that I see in King's, have a level of porn addiction in some level. And because it's just so available. And the thing that happens with that is that they're seeking intimacy through that, and they're feeling real shame about that. So I think the way you do it is you try to take the shame out of it. You try to normalize that this is the thing, because you get caught in this shame loop. They call it, where you then you feel awful about yourself, but then the only thing you can do to relieve that awfulness about yourself is go back to the same things you're addicted to. So I think that open, honest conversations, some of the stuff that you see on these porn sites is not great, and it's kind of disturbing. But I think if you then say to people like, this is a fetish and this is weird, then you have to encourage people to talk about it and accept that, like you say, people are looking for intimacy really a lot of the time through that. So yeah, open conversations, and that's a nice thing. That's all I can really do with those students, and that is to say, yeah, probably something we've all done, but what are you trying to get out of it, and what do you want from that experience, and how can you find that experience in a way that's going to make you feel better about yourself? And I think that's the key thing.
There's been a massive explosion in porn, isn't it? And one of the things I loved about what you did, Samantha, was like, it can be good. Porn. It's not totally all evil, and it was an interesting intervention, which was properly interesting because it was like, ooh, this is a new view, because porn is generally slated, I think, probably quite rightly, particularly with younger men, I think. So I don't know if you have...
Slated by younger men?
No.
As in a bad thing?
No, by the rest of society. We got far too much porn.
I mean, when I was growing up, porn was a copy of Razzle found in a hedge, right? If you were lucky. Yeah. An entire generation being brought up on it, and it's not like, it's like gross stuff. And this is boys and girls' introduction to intimacy and sex. Is like really quite extreme and generally misogynistic. Like really misogynistic stuff. I'm a massive advocate for free speech and free expression. I think this is one of the areas where I'm suddenly a bit of a reactionary, and I think that the porn industry needs to be. You have stepped in the right direction, I think, here by making it slightly harder for under 18-year-old to watch it, but not really. A 16-year-old would be able to work out how to use a VPN far quicker than I would, right? But I think it needs to be massively more restricted. I'm really glad that you've said that men find it difficult to talk about sex more than women, because there is this sort of cultural idea that that's all men talk about. It's like tits and, hey, and I did this and this happened. It's like men just don't. If you want to be shocked, you need to listen to my mother and my sister have a conversation. And it's just like, fucking hell, the honesty that women have. Whereas men just don't. I don't know what that is. I think men are actually a little bit more prudish, weirdly.
Yeah, I think, that's really interesting. And I do think that also the porn available online to younger people, well, probably to all of us, is probably causing a few issues, I would think. But it's great that we're talking about it. I think one of the problems with the British, is that we go, we can't talk about that. And I think that's something wonderful that you've done, Samantha. But anyway, how are we utilising the sort of more immersive new technologies to help men's health? Is there any way, things like virtual reality, augmented reality, or immersive experiences? Have you got any experience of that at all?
No, not massive, although I'm aware that they're looking into that now in terms of and I think it's got kind of mixed results. I think some people have had really gotten good experiences with it, and but there also has been quite a lot of links, I think, with some of these chatbots that do this kind of thing where it's very positive reinforcement, and there's links with male suicide around things like that. People, so I think it's an area that I think is really worthy of research. And I think if you could I think there's a lot of therapy, the kind of low end bits of therapy where you're encouraging people to live better, and where you could do that, and you could do that using technology in a really effective way. Yeah. But I think for more complex problems where people are at risk, it's a very dangerous piece of therapy. Yeah, you need people who can give you nuanced responses and think about different ways of coping. So I think
sort of mild end could be really useful.
I think it could be really great for tips about how you live, and healthy tips about sleep and diet would be really great to make that more available.
Yeah, no, that's good. Any particular views on that?
I think the idea of having sort of AI therapy is probably scares the shit out of me, really. But I suppose it might be useful, but I'm not sure it's being sort of monitored by professionals, right? It's just an AI. But yeah, I mean, we live in a world where, you can get help on YouTube for almost anything, like from exercise to breathing exercises to, a podcast about men's mental health or whatever, So there is kind of help out there through technology, but you're talking to the wrong person if you talk about technology.
No. Well, we need to look into it, but I do think that, face-to-face, and nothing replaces a face-to-face doctor or counselor experience, I think. Okay, one for you, both probably, but Tom Findlay particularly. How do you use music as therapy, especially if you're in a funk? the emotion, not music genre, or both?
Yeah.
So that's a good question.
It is a good question. I mean, I try to keep them really distinct because I often get asked to do these, like there's lots of panels around music and mental health. It's become a bit of a buzz thing.
Yeah.
And this is like the first podcast I've ever done, probably the last as well, but I've enjoyed it. but
we hope not. No,
it's interesting. I think music for me is like it's a balm. It's like I had a Kate Bush experience yesterday, but to a track called "Don't Give Up," which is a duet she did with Peter Gabriel, and I was having a bit of a tough time and put that on, and it's a lovely thing where Peter Gabriel's kind of struggling, and then she comes in and she's kind of encouraging him to keep going. It's a really beautiful song. Yeah. So moments like that can be lovely, can be quite transcendent. But I have never kind of incorporated music therapy into the stuff I do, but I think it's a lovely idea, and that's about, finding ways to engage people. And sort of, I did a tiny bit of work with a charity where I was kind of going out, it was based in Tottenham, and we were using music technology, and just people would come in and you do stuff together, but then you start to open up a conversation because you form a connection. So I think it's a way of drawing people in around a shared experience. It's been great.
And I do think comedy on Prescription, one of the things is also like that, because it's like a Trojan horse for getting men in the room chatting, isn't it? But also I think young people, music can be really transformative, and there's some things in Gloucester, for example, music works where young people who are quite angry and they've got a few major issues around anxiety, they go and DJ or shout at something or learn to play the guitar. So there is a therapy, but I can understand you would keep it separate in that way. Tom, particularly in terms of comedy and stuff, I don't think you would ever see that as therapy. You wouldn't see yourself as a therapist, would you?
Catharsism. Right. I think I deliver catharsism to myself sometimes. If something has happened in the news I've been walking around for 2 days going, I can't fucking believe it. Yeah. Well, I have the luxury of being able to spend a day writing how I'm feeling out in sort of fairly sweary terms. And I get to perform that, and there for me that issue is gone. So it's got rid of Donald Trump, having done this ridiculous thing. It's gone for me, and I don't carry it around with me. But also by virtue of that, the people that are watching it have been walking around for 2 days going, I can't believe Donald Trump did that. And then they get to watch someone express that in sweary, almost poetic terms. You go, that's what I think. And it helps them, there's a catharsis to that as well. So I suppose in a way that can be therapeutic. And laughter is, let's be honest, if you're in a real fug and have been for a long time, and you go out with one of your mates and you have one of those belly laughs where you're crying and you go, I don't even know what we're laughing at anymore, that will stay with you for days in a way that a therapy session might not, So laughter is, essential to your mental health.
Yeah, and there's
as well,
a lot of physiology around that, actually. Like intercostal muscles release endorphins when we do that. So it sort of makes you feel a bit high, like when you laugh. So that's fantastic. Now, Movember, a great organisation for men's health. They're just, Aisha's just asking about 82% of men that do actually, take their own lives, have seen mental health services or GPs or medical services within the last 4 weeks or something. So we're clearly not really picking up the risks. And I just wondered how we can ensure that health services are more sort of engaged and pick that up. Any ideas? I mean, maybe that's not a brilliant question for you, but I just wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is just to just don't be afraid to address it head on. Just ask the question.
Right.
And then I think people, there seems to be this idea that by asking that question, you'll make it more likely that somebody will kill themselves, and the evidence is completely opposite. Yeah. So I think we have to do this every week in my work, where you have to do these risk assessments. Yeah. And you just have to be really, really frank about it. And I think that's the best bit of advice. I mean, you can look at protective factors in their life and all the stuff that will be supportive for them. But yeah, just moving towards the problem, confronting it in a kind way, I think is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, but actually not ignoring the sort of elephant in the room, so to speak. Just always ask about it. And I don't know. I mean, I should be answering that.
You're better placed to answer.
I mean, I train doctors, and we have to ask about if someone's got some depressive symptoms. You will fail if I'm assessing you if you don't ask about, suicidal ideation. So I think it's really important, and we have to grade it. It's a difficult thing to do because I don't know about you lot, but I've occasionally felt close to the edge and thought about it. It's never gone that far, and I've obviously not a high risk, but we need to grade our risks in that way. And we do teach doctors how to do that. So I think that's really important. I want to crack on, if that's all right. So we're talking about the 45 to 50-year-old. Someone said, what about the 60 to 65 who will soon experience post-retirement isolation and loneliness? Yeah, good question. Thank you. What do you think? I mean, older people do get isolated, and again, particularly men who have got a lot of status through their job, who then retire. I don't know what you think about that. Do we need to just keep them working, or is there any particular thing that you can think about?
I'm sure it's the same applies to that age group as it would to any. It's about it's just all the obvious stuff, isn't it? About social connections, about kind of maintaining connection with stuff that brings meaning to your life,
right? Sort of hobbies,
I think that stuff is super important, and I can't think of anything particularly for that age bracket that would be different.
Well, I think social prescribing is a great way. Getting people to volunteer, actually, helping people just makes you feel better as well.
Absolutely.
So,
also, just aging, it's just fucking horrible. It's fucking horrible. I don't think I've ever, I'm only just beginning to experience it. I'm beginning to get grey hair. I look in the mirror and I go, oh, I'm moving house at the moment, so I've spent the week going through old stuff, and a lot of that's just photographs, and you go, fuck, I wish I'd known I was that hot, because I'm not anymore, and it's fucking depressing. And I don't know, I think maybe we need to, that needs to just be spoken about a bit more and acknowledged, like going grey, losing your hair, looking in the mirror and going, I'm not, it's fucking horrible. So I'm not surprised that people in their 50s and 60s struggle, and particularly as you near retirement. And also, like, when you're hitting 70 or 80, you can start to go, oh shit, how many years have I got? It's, I found hitting 45 really, really difficult, because I had this real sense of halfway, like genuinely halfway, and this sense every day I live now, you go, it feels like there's more days behind than there are ahead. And I know that sounds really depressing, but it's a real sense that I am coming to terms with as I hit 50. And I suppose it's a midlife crisis. I don't know, but I think getting old is fucking horrible, and must be therefore a mental health issue, because it's difficult, and your body I'm not in my body's starting to fall apart stage yet. But
that will come.
Yeah, but that will come, right?
No, I think that's true, and I think also, men find that. I think both men and women find that difficult, but we don't tend to talk about it. So again, just talking about it is great, and making it funny as well. It can be. I don't know if we've got sort of octogenarian sort of comedians, but I bet they're having a laugh about, I don't know, convenes or whatever. I don't know what, or enemas or whatever. But actually, if we carry on laughing at ourselves, that really does help, I think. So that's something I'll say. I just want to do a few more quick questions. I'm not going to have time for everyone's question. I'm really sorry. What's the kindest thing you've ever told yourself?
Oh, God.
That's a tricky one, isn't it?
I've forgiven myself for some awful mistakes that I've made.
Right.
Which I couldn't go into now because I get in all sorts of trouble.
But
right. I think it's that, and I think it's just accepting, our own humanity, and that we're flawed and we make mistakes, and that doesn't mean that, it's not allowing myself off the hook, but it's about knowing that kind of moving forwards is, you need to find a way of forgiveness.
Yeah, that's nice. That's profound, because we do all make mistakes, so that's really important.
There is a little mantra that's slightly wanky that I say just before I go on stage, because going on stage, like I say, it's terrifying, and I kind of hate it. I kind of hate walking onto stage because it's terrifying, but I tell myself something which reminds me of where I've come from, and I just go, this is a fucking privilege, don't you forget it. And I say that every time before I walk on stage, and it kind of helps me, and it reminds me where I've come from, and I think that's me being kind to myself.
I could be a bit kinder, but
Maybe. Yeah, I mean,
know what you're trying to
I'm
say.
still admonishing myself, I think.
You could congratulate yourself for getting
privilege. Yeah, I guess so. Well done. That's
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
bit
Yeah, no, I'm going to
beyond
give
me.
that to someone at the front. If you could just say who you are as well.
Yeah, I'm Jonathan Bennett. I'm here with Queer Stand Up, which is a comedy night in East London. I had a question about role models. You touched on like male role models, and you gave examples about the manosphere as like kind of bad role models. I guess I'm interested what traits does the panel think makes a good role model, and could you name someone that actually embodies those traits, whoever that may be?
Great, good question.
that's a
Thank
great question.
you. Keir Starmer, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I had to say that.
I mean, I think it's about, I think that it's, going back to the sort of manosphere conversations, it's about kind of, I find like complicated people way more interesting than people that try to nail down the world and just kind of simple solutions. So, I mean, I love Prince. So I would say someone like that who's kind of, who's all things to all people, kind of pansexual and interesting, amazing musician, but kind of loved women and sort of loved men. He was great at basketball apparently as well, which is a surprise. But I would say he was like, I liked his sort of, that kind of outsider status that he had around him. So, I mean, he would be someone that I would really look up to as a musician. There's probably other ones, but he's probably not a great role model as a counsellor and a therapist, maybe not. But I think it's just just acknowledging the kind of complexity of humanity is a really important thing. I think he embodies that in all sorts of interesting ways.
Fantastic.
I can't think of anyone specifically, just because my brain's not working, but obviously like kindness and honesty and I always admire someone that because I don't feel I have this skill, but when you first meet them, make you feel welcome and are interested and are listening and make what could be an awkward first social encounter easy. I always appreciate that from someone.
No, a really good question. A sort of related question here: the harder to reach or more marginalised men, so LGBT and religious and racial backgrounds, should we be reaching out to them? Because I think particularly LGBT have taken a few knocks recently and feel quite marginalised. And I just wondered whether we specifically have to sort of reach out to those groups. I don't know what you think.
I mean, I definitely think that's something that we need to do. I think I would say that would be true for the black community as well in the UK, which are quite underrepresented in mental health, and we should make way more efforts in that sense as well. So I mean, I think there's a lot of initiatives. I mean, King's is sort of not really it's quite a perfect world in terms, we have 20 counsellors working full time and a very diverse group of students, but there's a lot of efforts made around that. I absolutely think we should to draw those groups in, and if you look at correlation with mental health, LGBT groups would tend to do a lot worse off. They would be suffering from a lot more discrimination. So absolutely, they're groups that we should.
Yeah, and I think they are at higher risk of
Yeah.
taking their own lives as well. I mean, one of these things: should we reach out to them? Obviously, the answer is yes, isn't it? But I just wondered how we could do it. I don't know whether.
I also think that you can. I did a sitcom for BBC Radio, and there were a couple of subjects in the first series that I kind of avoided because you go, look, I'm a straight white man, I'm not supposed to talk about these issues. And then in the second series, I suppose I found a bit of confidence in it, and you go, fuck it, I do have an opinion on these matters. I do have an opinion on certain issues of race, on certain issues of gender, or not even offering my opinion, but you go, I can write a fictionalized discussion about this and represent different views. And I sometimes wonder whether shutting up because you feel, well, I don't actually have skin in the game in this. You go, we all live in the same society. I might be right and I might be wrong. And as long as I'm mindful that I don't have that lived experience, I think it can sometimes actually come across as patronizing if you don't talk about these things because I'm a straight white man. Yes, I am a straight white man. I can't change that, but I can open up a discussion about certain issues as long as I'm, like I say, as long as I'm mindful of the fact that I don't have that lived experience. I mean, that's kind of what art is about, particularly acting and fiction. You're putting yourself in the position of other people. And sometimes by ignoring those issues because of your own gender or race or sexuality, you're actually doing more to otherize those sections of society than not. And I might be wrong about this, by the way. I might be completely wrong, and you might completely disagree with me on that. But
it's interesting.
That's my feeling on it.
Well, we had a question about, there's certain areas you're not allowed to talk about. Is that right? And it is one of those things, and a bit like Samantha did, talking about sex and, using sex toys. We don't talk about that. Sorry, everyone. But actually, it's great to talk about it in some ways. But people will be offended as well. And the problem with a politician is you get it in the neck a bit. I think you're in a good position, Jonathan, because you really say what you like, can't you?
I play a character who purports to say what he likes.
Yeah.
I am, Tom, much more aware of the impact that character can have, and therefore I do curate it a lot more than it appears.
Right.
When it's performed, he comes across as a belligerent know-all, who's right a lot of the time, but also wrong. But I'm not him. So I suppose I can say what I like, but I am always mindful of the impact that can have, whereas the character I play probably wouldn't.
Maybe we all need this sort of side character that can really say stuff. Yeah, it must be really useful that way. Can I just do a few quick thank yous? So Mental Health Matters, thank you for providing and for doing that. Can I thank Stephen Kinsella sitting here, who's funded a lot of this work, so that's fantastic. Thank you for that. A particularly big round for Lou Jackson at the back there, who's amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Lou. Can I thank Jenny Bowles for doing this amazing backdrop that I carried in my car up here. And everyone from Brimscombe Mill that made it possible. Thank you, guys. Jess, particularly, and Will as well. And although they're not here, NHS Gloucestershire, and NHS is, I think, our proudest achievement in this country. And combining it with music, which were brilliant, and comedy, that were brilliant. What a great combination that is. So thank you to the NHS. And Emmeline, who's been filming. And can I lastly thank my team? So I think you all know that, Satchel and Sufyan and Hereward, who put up with me and Lou's mad ideas and run with it. And they've been fantastic, and they've really made this happen. So thank you for that. That's fantastic. I'm not going to go all Oscar speech here, but can I just say, due to Tom's, that's been really interesting. I haven't had such an interesting discussion in Parliament for ages and ages. So that's been really, really good. Thank you for being frank. And so, yeah, really amazing. Thank you.